You just threw away your future for a biker, the manager shouted, eyes blazing with disbelief. And just like that, James Carter's decade-long job as a senior mechanic vanished. But let's rewind. James wasn't the kind of man to seek attention. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a quiet demeanor, he clocked in every morning at Maxwell Auto Repair in Jacksonville, Florida, with the same focus and dedication he'd given for the last 10 years. He'd been raised by his grandmother in a modest home with strong values, integrity, kindness, and always lending a hand, no matter who needed it. On the surface, Maxwell Auto was like any other repair shop, grimy floors, scent of oil, tools clinking, but under the hood, so to speak, it was a pressure cooker. James was the only black mechanic there, and while his skill was unmatched, he'd spent years biting his tongue at the small digs, the side-eye jokes, and the promotions he never got. He told himself it didn't matter. He was building something for his daughter, Alina, a future she could count on. Then came that morning. A thunderous rumble shook the garage walls. Heads turned as a massive Harley-Davidson pulled into the lot, its chrome glinting like a mirror. The rider, a bearded, heavily tattooed man in a Hell's Angels leather vest, stepped off, his limp suggesting a fight with the bike or something worse. He had a presence that made people step back. Everyone did. Except James. The rider scanned the space. Bikes making a hell of a noise. Belts off. Need it fixed now, he growled. James stepped forward, wiping his hands on a rag. I can take a look. The room went dead silent. His co-workers avoided eye contact. Even the manager, Mr. Dorsey, narrowed his eyes. You sure? The biker asked, a hint of amusement and surprise in his voice. James nodded. Yeah. Let's get her running again. No one else moved. The unspoken rule. You don't touch a Hell's Angels bike. Too risky. Too complicated. Too much reputation. James got to work, eyes scanning the machine like a surgeon. The tension in the room crackled. The biker watched closely, his expression unreadable. After 45 minutes of intense focus, the Harley roared back to life, smoother than before. James wiped his brow. She's good, he said simply. The biker nodded slowly. Didn't think you'd touch it. Most folks don't. What's your name? James. I'm Bear, the biker said, extending a large, calloused hand. You're solid. The moment felt human, two men, different worlds, connected by mutual respect. But that peace shattered as soon as Bear drove off. Dorsey stormed in. What the hell were you thinking? He spat. James looked confused. I fixed the bike. That's what we do. You don't touch their bikes. We've had issues before. You brought that here. That's liability. I wasn't gonna turn him away. He needed help. Dorsey's face turned red. That wasn't your call. You're fired. Clear your stuff out. James stood frozen. Fired. Overdoing the right thing. He packed in silence. No one stood up for him. Not the junior mechanics he mentored. Not the manager he covered for during tough audits. Not even the cashier he once drove home in the rain. The air around him was heavy with guilt and silence. He walked out into the hot Florida sun, heart pounding, pride bruised. What would he tell Alina? Rent was due in a week. The next few days were a blur of rejection. Applications, interviews, doors shut in his face. Overqualified. We're not hiring. Try back next season. His savings thinned out. He skipped meals to keep the fridge full for Alina. His old car sputtered every morning, and he began wondering if he should just sell it. One morning, while walking Alina to school, she asked softly, Daddy, why don't you go to the garage anymore? James paused. Daddy's looking for something better, he said with a forced smile. She nodded, holding his hand tighter. You're the best fixer. You fixed Mr. Johnson's car when no one could. And that big bike too. He kissed her forehead. Thank you, baby. That night, as James sat reviewing more job boards, a knock shook the door. It was Bear. In full leather gear, with two other riders behind him. James opened cautiously. Everything okay? Bear took off his helmet. We need to talk. Inside, Bear got straight to the point. I didn't know you lost your job over helping me. That's messed up. James waved it off. I'll figure it out. No. You shouldn't have to, Bear said firmly. What you did? That's rare. You helped me when everyone else backed off. That's character. One of the other bikers, a man named Tank, spoke up. We run a few repair shops of our own. You ever thought about running your own place? James blinked. I don't have the money for that. Bear smiled. We do. And we've got bikes and cars that need a man who actually gives a damn. We'll fund the startup, equipment, everything. But it's your shop. You in? James stared, stunned. Why would you do that? Bear shrugged. Because good men like you don't come around often. And because you did what was right, not what was safe. That deserves a shot. For the first time in weeks, James felt breath return to his lungs. Weeks later, the grand opening of Carter & Sons Auto and Cycle brought a crowd. Locals, bikers, friends, strangers. The garage had a mural painted outside, a black father holding a wrench beside his daughter, with the words, "Character is built when no one is watching." Alina stood proudly beside her dad, handing out flyers. Dorsey drove by that day, watching from across the street. He saw James surrounded by community, laughter, business booming. And he drove away quietly. James never gloated. That wasn't his style. But he made sure to hire people who needed second chances, ex-cons, single moms, immigrants. His garage became a beacon. Years later, a news story featured him with the headline. The mechanic who said yes when everyone said no. And every time someone asked James why he did it, why he helped a biker that could have brought him trouble, he'd just say. Because help doesn't come with conditions. That's how my grandma raised me. What started as a firing ended as a legacy. And the man who was once cast aside for doing the right thing. He became the symbol of what right truly looks like.